The land under Flevoland was reclaimed from the sea. When a local farmer struck wood with his plow, he heard frantic knocking from inside the buried hull. Have you heard of the Witte Wieven? These spectral women hide in the Dutch fog to lure travelers. If you smell rotting lilies tonight, do not look out your window. He is invisible, heavy, and climbs onto the shoulders of lonely travelers. They call him Blue Garrett, and his weight can slowly crush your spine. In the north, they fear the Bories, a massive ghost hound with disproportionate eyes. If it crosses your path, absolute silence is your only defense. In 1712, the Zuiddorp vanished. Skeletons were never found, but local tribes spoke of pale, faceless men emerging from the freezing waves. The polders of the Netherlands are sinking back into the earth. Geologists drilling a core sample pulled up human hair that was still actively growing. A modern cargo ship radar detected a massive vessel on a collision course. But when they looked out, they saw an 18th century galleon crewed by hanging shadows. Crossing the Maas River at midnight comes with a toll. The ferryman will take your coins, but if you look at his neck, you'll see he has no head. Amsterdam's Blood Street is named for a reason. Tourists walking the cobblestones often find their reflections trapped in puddles, screaming from a past execution. Flevoland is a marvel of engineering, built on a graveyard. Construction workers routinely uncover perfectly stacked skulls that whisper when the wind blows. Your smart speaker is always listening to you. But last night, mine started speaking in my dead mother's voice, warning me about the man in the attic. We install cameras to feel safe. I checked my hallway feed and saw a tall, multi-jointed entity crawling rapidly toward my bedroom door. Parents trust baby monitors to keep their kids safe. Yesterday, my monitor picked up a lullaby, but the voice wasn't human, and my baby was answering back. Virtual reality tricks the human brain. A gamer took off his headset after 10 hours, only to realize the real world hadn't loaded its textures yet. We blindly follow GPS navigation. Last night, my map directed me to an abandoned dirt road, and the screen flashed, "He is in the back seat." Drones can see what we cannot. A hobbyist flew his drone over a neighbor's chimney and discovered a massive nest made entirely of human bones. Self-driving cars are the future. But when my doors locked on the highway and the car sped up to 100 miles per hour, the screens simply read, "Sacrifice." We trust our reflections implicitly. But when I turned away from my smart mirror today, I saw in the corner of my eye that my reflection didn't move. Analog horror isn't just fiction. A cursed tape was found in a flooded basement, and anyone who watches the static sees a hand reaching for their throat. Smart vacuums clean your house automatically. I woke up in the dark and followed my robot's path, only to realize it was smearing a trail of thick, dark blood. The ocean is 80% unexplored. When a submersible descended into the Marianas Trench, the sonar didn't pick up rocks. It picked up a colossal, blinking eye. Submarines are iron coffins. The sonar operator reported a massive blip approaching rapidly, but the screen showed the entity was already inside the hull. Deep winter isolates the bravest men. An ice fisherman dropped his line into the freezing water, but what he pulled up had human hands and no eyes. The deep end of a pool triggers primal fear. A late-night swimmer looked down and saw a black void open up, pulling the water into an endless abyss. Cave diving is the deadliest sport on Earth. A diver squeezed into an uncharted cavern and found an underwater Victorian parlor, complete with a ticking clock. Glass is the only thing between you and predators. At the shark tunnel, the thick glass cracked, and a humanoid creature with gills smiled at me. Basements hold the dark history of a house. I waded into the flooded water to unclog the drain, but a clump of black hair grabbed my wrist. Ancient ruins harbor old gods. A diver exploring sunken Greek pillars turned around and realized the marble statues were actively following his movements. Beach bonfires cast long shadows. A group of teens laughed around the fire, unaware that one of their shadows on the cliff wall was decapitating the others. Ocean oil rigs endured brutal isolation. Workers during a hurricane reported that the massive waves weren't water. They were writhing black tentacles. Space is the ultimate sensory deprivation. An astronaut looked out the lunar base window at Earth, only to watch our entire planet blink out of existence. In the vacuum of space, no one can hear you scream. A spacewalker checked his visor reflection and saw a towering cosmic entity standing right behind him. Mars is a dead, red planet. But when scientists enhanced the latest rover image, they realized the landscape was actually the skin of a sleeping god. The International Space Station orbits in silence. But last night, the crew heard frantic knocking coming from the outside of the airlock hatch. Telescopes bring the distant universe closer. Scanning a nebula millions of light years away, an astronomer watched the stars physically open like a colossal eyelid. Dead air on the radio isn't empty. A deep space monitoring station picked up a signal, and when decoded, it was just the sound of billions of people screaming. Meteorites bring cosmic debris to Earth. A farmer found a smoking crater in his field, but the rock had split open, revealing a pulsing, bioluminescent heart. The stars have guided humanity for centuries, but at midnight, amateur stargazers watched in horror as the constellations physically rearranged to spell run. Zero gravity makes water float in perfect spheres, but when a crew member got a nosebleed, the floating blood droplets sprouted microscopic legs and scuttled away. A blood moon is a celestial event, but during the total eclipse, high-powered cameras captured massive shadowy spider legs wrapping around the lunar surface. Liminal spaces break the human mind. A hotel guest walked down his corridor, but after 2 hours, the room numbers started counting backwards. The last train of the night is always empty. But when the doors opened at my stop, the station signs were bleeding and written in an alien language. Retail workers hate closing time. A mall cop doing his rounds noticed that every single faceless mannequin in the department store was now pointing at him. The back rooms are real. A man walked through a normal office door and found himself trapped in endless, humming yellow hallways with a shadow lurking ahead. Late-night laundromats attract the strange. I was alone washing clothes when the dryer started violently tumbling a screaming, shadowy figure. The dead are supposed to rest in peace. A mortician was doing his rounds when a steel freezer door violently dented outward from the inside. Highway rest stops at 3 a.m. are terrifying. I was washing my face in the filthy sink, looked up, and saw a decaying figure standing directly behind me. Lost luggage ends up in auction. A buyer bought an unclaimed vintage suitcase, forced the lock, and found it filled with beating mechanical organs. High school locker rooms echo with voices. I walked into the misty communal showers and saw a tall silhouette, but its knees were bending entirely backwards. Don't play the elevator game. A teenager hit the buttons in the wrong sequence. The floor display turned negative, and the doors opened to a burning red sky. Seeing your doppelganger is an omen of death. But what do you do when your exact double stands on your lawn in the rain, holding a knife? Mirrors show us our reality. I woke up in a cold sweat, looked at my bedroom mirror, and saw my reflection smiling while I was terrified. Twins share a supernatural bond.
I'm gonna
A mother was filming her children playing when one of them momentarily glitched into a terrifying digital monster. Suburbia hides the darkest secrets. I waved at my neighbor, but as he waved back, his jaw completely unhinged and dropped to his chest. Skinwalkers mimic the voices of your loved ones.
We just have to go past that old
I was talking to my best friend in the woods until his eyes blinked sideways like a reptile. Shadow play is an innocent childhood game. But when I made a bird on the wall, the shadow detached itself, flew across the room, and attacked the lamp. Puddles reflect our world. I looked down at the rainy asphalt, but the reflection showed a clear, sunny day where a massive beast was roaming the sky. Art captures a moment in time. I bought a thrift store portrait of a Victorian man, but every morning his painted eyes follow me across the room. Vintage photographs freeze the past. I was looking at an old family portrait from 1920, and the mother in the picture slowly turned her head to stare at me. Urban decay brings strange anomalies. I walked past a pile of discarded mannequins in an alley, and one dropped to all fours and sprinted toward me. Antique items carry the energy of their owners. I bought a Victorian music box, but it only plays when its shadow transforms into a towering, horned demon. Analog machines have no mind of their own. Yet my vintage typewriter began typing at blinding speed, printing page after page of a single, drawn eye. Time is the ultimate predator. When an old grandfather clock began ticking backwards, the ancient wood split open and started to bleed a thick, dark sap. Porcelain dolls have lifeless eyes. I put my grandmother's doll on the highest shelf, but I woke up to find its shattered face hovering inches from my own. Old cameras capture spirits. I found a vintage flash camera in the dark, and with every burst of light, a pale, screaming entity got closer to the lens. Abandoned diners hold echoes of the past. I plugged in a dusty jukebox, but as the song played, I realized the vinyl record was made of writhing human hair. Rotary phones belong to a bygone era. I picked up a disconnected black phone, and a fleshy, wet tongue slithers out of the mouthpiece against my ear. A man approached a lit vending machine in a dark alley. He put in his coins, only to realize the snacks had been replaced by beating human hearts. Weaving looms create intricate tapestries. I found an antique loom weaving by itself, creating a picture that depicted my exact, gruesome death in perfect detail. Silver hand mirrors show your true self. I looked into an antique glass, and the reflection showed my entire room engulfed in fire while I stood in the cold. X-rays see right through us. A doctor examining a chest film watched in horror as the skeletal ribcage expanded and a shadowy hand reached out from inside. Medical scanners are deeply claustrophobic. Halfway through my MRI, the lights flickered, and a pale face pressed against the roof of the tube, inches from mine. Old houses settle and creak. I chipped away the peeling plaster in my living room, only to reveal the bricks were actually thousands of rotting human molars. Ink is supposed to be permanent, but a man woke up to find his intricate snake tattoo had moved from his arm and was physically slithering toward his throat. The human body is a parasite's paradise. After a trip overseas, a man felt a second heartbeat, but it was coming from a massive shape pushing out of his stomach. Dermatologists warn about changing moles. I looked in the mirror at a dark spot on my back, and it suddenly sprouted tiny spider legs and scuttles away. Biology classrooms are creepy at night. A janitor was sweeping the floor when the plastic anatomical muscle model violently blinked its painted eyes and tracked his movements. Museums house cursed artifacts. A beautiful landscape oil painting hung in the gallery until thick, hyper-realistic blood began pouring from the painted river onto the real floor. Shower drains easily clog. I reached down to pull out the blockage, and a massive clump of wet black hair slithered completely out of the drain and wrapped around my wrist. People shed dead skin every day. But I walked into my bedroom and found a perfectly intact, translucent human skin suit lying on my bed like discarded clothes. Abandoned asylums echo with trauma. Urban explorers walk down a dark psychiatric hall when a rusted wheelchair at the far end violently rolled itself directly at them. Abandoned theme parks are monuments to decay. Explorers booted up a rusted generator, and a single Ferris wheel cart spun wildly on its own, dripping fresh blood. Lighthouse keepers endure brutal isolation. One logbook ended with a frantic scrawl. The light didn't attract ships. It attracted the things crawling up the exterior walls. Doomsday preppers buried themselves alive. A man opened his reinforced steel bunker, only to find an exact, rotting replica of himself already sitting inside, waiting. Plants thrive in humid environments. I walked into the overgrown greenhouse and realized the hanging vines were actually tangled masses of human hair dripping with dark sap. Graveyards are silent cities. A gravedigger was finishing his shift when the soil violently erupted, and a ringing, pristine, modern smartphone was thrust out of the dirt. Isolation drives people mad. Trapped in a winter cabin, the survivor realized the wooden walls were slowly expanding and contracting, breathing like massive, ancient lungs. Holy places aren't immune to evil. A priest was locking up his church when the demon in the stained glass window blinked, smirked, and looked directly at him. Slaughterhouses smell of rust and death. A night watchman walked past the empty meat hooks, only to find a massive, shadow-drenched cocoon of human limbs hanging at the end. The Sahara Desert hides ancient mysteries. A drone flying over a Wild West ghost town descended into a bottomless, perfectly circular pit of melted glass in the street. The Appalachian Mountains are older than bones. Hikers often see a pale, antlered figure mimicking a human wave from behind the dense pine trees. Never wave back. Fire is humanity's oldest protection. But while camping alone, the flames parted, and a perfectly unburned human face smiled at me from the white-hot coals. The deep woods play tricks on your mind. I was walking on a dirt trail, turned around, and the path was instantly replaced by a solid wall of bleeding trees. Spelunkers squeezed through tight, terrifying spaces. Deep in an unmapped cave, a crawler shined his light up and saw hundreds of screaming human faces pressed into the solid rock. Search and rescue officers know about the isolated stairs in the woods. They lead to nowhere, but tonight, a thick, dark fluid is cascading down the wooden steps. Scarecrows protect the harvest, but at sunset, the one in my field lowered its straw arms, stepped off the wooden post, and sprinted directly toward my house. Building a snowman is a joyful winter tradition. I drove past the one in my yard and heard the crunch of snow as its head turned 180 degrees to track my car. Quicksand swallows everything silently. A child dropped his toy robot into a bubbling mud pit, and hundreds of gray, lifeless hands reached up to drag it down. A tsunami siren signifies impending doom. But looking at the distant ocean horizon, the townspeople realized the massive shape rising from the water wasn't a wave. It was a humanoid. Dense fog hides monsters. A pedestrian walking in the silent forest mist watched in terror as a pair of impossibly long, stilt-like legs stepped completely over him. Night train sliced through the darkness. For a fraction of a second, I looked out the speeding window and saw a horrific, pale face perfectly keeping pace with the train. Flying is the safest way to travel. But looking out the window at 30,000 feet, I saw a giant, decaying hand reach out from the storm clouds and graze the metal wing. The Phantom Hitchhiker is a classic urban legend. Until a driver picked up a girl in the rain and realized her face was a void of television static. Dashcams record everything.
Open the door! Let us in!
I was parked on a dark, empty
Help
street
us,
when
please
dozens of
help us.
bloody handprints violently and simultaneously slapped the outside of my windshield. Automated car washes trap you inside your vehicle. As the blue brushes spun against my glass, a mangled, screaming face tangled in the bristles stared directly at me. The third rail is deadly. A rat ran across the electrified subway tracks, but was instantly snatched by a pale human hand emerging from the solid concrete floor. Being stranded on a ski lift is freezing agony. In the dead of night, invisible footprints suddenly appeared in midair, walking across the empty void toward my suspended chair. Theme parks engineer fear safely. But as my roller coaster reached the peak of the highest drop, the tracks abruptly ended, plunging the coaster into an infinite black void. We are tethered to our shadows. I was riding my bicycle at sunset when my shadow disconnected from the bike and began pedaling furiously toward me on the wall. Midnight highway drives are lonely. I pulled up to a remote toll booth, only to find a featureless gray mannequin slowly extending its plastic hand for a coin. You rarely check your dark attic. When a homeowner went up to fix a leak, a pair of glowing eyes lowered into the darkness, and the trap door slammed shut. Basements are damp and terrifying. I approached my old iron furnace, but when the grill opened, it revealed rows of massive, grinding human teeth bathed in fire. The monster in the closet is a childhood fear. I slowly pushed open my wardrobe door and saw a hanging winter coat with two pale, bare feet hovering above the floor. Never let your limbs hang off the bed. I looked under the mattress for a lost item, and a long, multi-jointed arm shot out from the shadows at my face. Checking the mail is a mundane daily routine. I opened the metal flap of my suburban mailbox, and a long gray tongue lolled out, dropping a letter on the grass. Wall safes protect our most valuable secrets. I walked past my heavy steel safe and watched in horror as the thick metal door physically inhaled and exhaled. Old houses creak as they settle. I looked straight up at my plaster ceiling and the shape of a massive human face pressed downward, stretching the ceiling like rubber. Peeking through a keyhole is an invasion of privacy. I looked through the antique brass lock, only to see another eye looking back, its pupil violently dilating. A shadow outside your window is terrifying. I looked at the silhouette of a man staring into my room, but his knees were bent entirely backward. Santa isn't the only thing that comes down the chimney. I heard scratching, looked up the dark brickwork, and a pale, contorted figure rapidly scuttles down toward me. Vertigo is the fear of falling. A man jumped from a high-rise balcony, but instead of falling to the street, he stopped in midair and fell violently upward into the clouds. We look up at the sky for comfort, but on a clear blue day, the clouds parted and the sky itself opened like a colossal human eyelid looking down at the city. The sun gives life to Earth. I was watching a beautiful sunset when the star instantly collapsed into a swirling black hole, draining the color from the world. A blood moon is scientifically explainable, but through a telescope, astronomers watched the lunar surface crack open and bleed a thick crimson fluid that fell toward Earth. A closed door represents safety. I stared at the white door of my bedroom as the brass doorknob slowly turned, melted entirely into liquid metal, and dripped onto the floor. The back rooms break the laws of physics. I sprinted down an office hallway, looked into a mirror, and saw my own back running away, realizing I was trapped in an infinite loop. Reality is a fragile simulation. Sitting Sitting in my normal living room, the air suddenly tore open, revealing a low poly-digital void of static and a creature climbing out. Our solar system has only one star. I looked out over the desert horizon and watched the sunset, only to see a second, massive, blood-red sun setting on the opposite side. Shadows mimic our every move. I watched my shadow on a concrete wall take out a knife and physically sever its own shadow head, causing me to collapse to the ground. Hardwood floors are solid and safe. But as I took a step, the wood planks instantly dissolved into a bottomless, dark ocean trench, and massive shapes swam below my feet.